Dear speakers, welcome here to the Geneva Press Club in the Domaine de Pente. Welcome also to all those who follow us on Zoom and all those who follow us on our website, www.pressclub.ch, as well as on our YouTube channel and Facebook Live. So we are here for this press conference. We are going to talk about the situation of human rights in specifically in China and in Pakistan today. And without taking too much time, I will just give you and pass you the golden book to be signed by all the speakers. Thank you very much. You can just sign it here. And I will, with not waiting more, directly give the speech for this session. There will be some films also that will be showed. I will give the floor in this session to Mr. Sital. Mr. Sital is the founder and chairman of Global Human Rights Defense. The floor is yours, Mr. Sital.
Hello. Thank you all for joining us in this prestigious club in Geneva. Thank you, sir, for introducing us. And we are here to highlight the human rights violation in two countries. BHRC is an NGO in the Netherlands, in The Hague, and we are focusing on minority rights across the world. But as you know, in this press conference, we just want to focus on two countries. My team is we have a very young team, very dynamic team. They are working with heart and they are very motivated also. And I'm always proud that my team can explain about human rights violation in country where they have never been, but they are so motivated that they can tell sometimes more than the people who live there. So if you want to know more about BHRC, please check our website. And after that, I'm available for questions, but we are now more than 21 years old. We have the ECOSOC status, and at this moment, there are more than 40 nationalities working for us, and on a daily basis, we have almost 85 volunteers on academic level in our organization. Means that we have the youngest staffing and volunteers. I think because of my age, I bring the level down. But hopefully new leaders will come up and take my place. I'm really honored to say that one person who can really know about Pakistan, and she will speak on behalf of BHRC on Pakistan, is Emma. And I will ask her to give a brief what BHRC is doing with Pakistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sital. I want to thank everyone for joining here today and also the people online. My name is Emma Barnard and I'm the coordinator for Team Pakistan at Global Human Rights Defense. My team and I, we conduct research and we voice the concerns for the atrocities and the human rights violations committed against minorities and marginalized groups in Pakistan. Think of women and children, disabled children, religious minorities such as the Hindus and the Christians, but also the LGBTQ+ community. They continuously face issues such as forced conversions, forced marriages, honor killings, and a discriminatory application of the blasphemy laws. We have extensively focused on issues such as child labor. Research has shown that since 1996, at least 3.3 million children in Pakistan are trapped in the child labor industry, simultaneously being deprived of their health, education, and childhood. Following that, we also focused on the lack of access to education for children in Pakistan. In 2020 alone, UNICEF estimated that 22.7 million children are unable to attend school. Our research has also shown that especially girls are deprived of access to education. In fact, 32% of girls in Pakistan are not attending school for various reasons. We find that the lack of public funding is the main culprit. Only 2.8% of Pakistan's GDP is allocated towards education. Global Human Rights Defense firmly believes that the international community and the Pakistani government must prioritize their young citizens' ability to attend school, because we have to remember that the children of today will be the leaders of tomorrow. So proper, affordable, and accessible education is key. Violence against women and children in Pakistan is an ever-growing problem that needs to be addressed and needs urgent attention. Estimates tell us that 32% of Pakistani women have experienced some form of physical violence, whether on the streets or in the workplace. 40% of women suffer from domestic abuse, which then risks being normalized in the eyes of their daughters. This problem needs to be tackled as soon as possible, and we applaud the already positive developments that have taken place, such as locator apps like the Punjab Safe City Authority Women Safety app. Lastly, I want to draw your attention to the violence committed against the LGBTQ+ community, especially the transgender population. Despite growing attentions and laws protecting trans rights, people still face a stigma, poverty, and murder. Research shows that the nation's damaging colonial past, which left an anti-LGBTQ+ legacy throughout Asia, is also to blame. While there are progressive laws in Pakistan that protect the rights of transgenders, such as recognizing their transgender identity on national cards, transgender people are often disowned by their family. As a result, 51% of the transgender community work in the sex industry or they beg on the streets, both of which have been outlawed in Pakistan. Global Human Rights Defense asks the international community to pay more attention to the ongoing issues in Pakistan in their foreign policy. We focus and we will continue to use our voice to help marginalized minorities in Pakistan by giving a voice to those who continue to be unheard. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I would like to welcome everybody on behalf of Global Human Rights Defense once again. My name is Lina Borchardt. I am overlooking the promotion and event team at Global Human Rights Defense. And today I will try my best to introduce our speakers to you. First of all, thanks again, Emma. I think she is one of the colleagues that can give you a little bit of an insight into our work at Global Human Rights Defense. As Ital mentioned, that we're quite a young team, and we have a delegation here in Geneva as well. And I think you can meet us again after this press conference and get to know each other. So I think we should start with the first item on the agenda, the Uyghur movie, which is a movie presented to all of us on this human rights situation in China regarding the Uyghur population there. Thank you very much.
Life in darkness, the abduction, forced conversion and forced marriages of minority girls are common practices in Pakistan. An estimated 1,000 minority girls are forced into such marriages every year. From them, up to 700 are Christians and 300 are Hindus.
मैं जरा कहता हूँ जाओ जाके सिंध में देखो हिंदुओं का हाल देखो उन बेचारों को जबरदस्ती शादियां करवाते हैं मुसलमान करने के लिए.
These minority girls are usually between the age of 12 to 25, abduction, converted to Islam and married to abductor or by a third party.
हिंदू लड़की उसको किडनैप करके फोर्स कन्वर्जन करके और किडनैप कर लिया गया और उसके माँ बाप जो है वो बेचारे रो रहे हैं खड़े हर जगह पे दरवाजे खड़खड़ आ रहे हैं कि हमारी कोई इंसाफ हो और ये पता नहीं चल रहा कि वो लड़की जो है उसको कैसे किडनैप किया और कैसे कन्वर्जन हुई फिर ज़बरदस्ती शादी हुई या नहीं हुई. दरअसल इस किस्म के जो केसेस होते हैं ये 90% लड़की को उठा लिया जाता है. अच्छा. उसको कानून के तहत उसको جلدی سے بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم میں مسلمان ہوں کروا کے پھر کلمہ پڑھوا کے اور اس کے بعد جنسی زیادتی کی جاتی ہے. وہ اس کو یہ کہا جاتا ہے کہ تم سے شادی ہو گئی ہے, تم مسلمان بن گئی ہو, شادی ہو گئی ہے, اور اس کے بعد تاکہ ان کو پھر ہاتھ نہ کوئی لگا سکے یہ کہا جائے کہ یہ تو خود آئی ہے اور یہ کنورٹ ہو گئی ہے, اب میری بیوی ہے. اس سے زیادہ اور وہ عدالتیں اور پولیس وہ بڑے سمپیتھیٹک ہوتے ہیں کہ جی کسی ایک دیریے کو یا ایک انفیڈل کو آپ نے مسلمان بنا دیا, اس سے زیادہ کیا آپ کو جنت نصیب ہوگی, کیا یہ ایک ماحول بنایا ہوا ہے. مگر ایکچولی اس کے پیچھے جو ہے وہ بالکل ایک زیادتی ہے. اس کے پیچھے اس کا کوئی مذہب کے ساتھ تعلق نہیں ہے, مذہب کو استعمال کیا جا رہا ہے. اور پھر اس کے بعد کیا ہوتا ہے یہ آج تک کسی نے نہیں آپ کو بتایا, مگر جو 90% کیسز ہیں جو رپورٹ شائع ہوتی ہے, ایسی لڑکیاں اگر وہ اپنے ماں باپ کے پاس نہ جائیں یا نہ وہ ماں باپ واپس لے سکے انہیں, تو وہ 2-3-4 مہینے کے بعد وہ جو شخص جس نے ان کے ساتھ شادی کی ہوئی ہوتی ہے یہ لڑکیاں غائب ہو جاتی ہیں, یہ ان کے پاس بھی نہیں رہتی. اور اگر ان سے پوچھا جائے کہ یہ لڑکی آپ نے شادی کی تھی, کنورٹ کیا تھا, وہ کہاں گئی, تو آگے سے جواب نہیں ملتا. 90% کیسز میں یہ لڑکیاں جو ہیں یہ غائب ہو جاتی ہیں یا مار دی جاتی ہیں یا ان کو پروسٹیٹیوشن میں دھکیل دیا جاتا ہے, اور پھر وہ چھپاتی پھرتی ہیں کہ ان کے ساتھ کیا ہوا, کیونکہ وہ بے عزتی ہے یا اس قسم کی بات, اور خاندان بھی اس کو چھپا دیتے.
After such incident, when family of victim file FIR for abduction or rape of their daughter at local police station, an abductor on behalf of the abducted girl also filed a counter FIR, accusing the minority family for harassing the willfully converted and married minority girl and conspiring to convert the girl back to Christianity or Hinduism. Upon production in court or before the magistrate, the victim girl is asked to testify whether she is converted and married of her own free will or if she was abducted. In most cases, the girl remains in the custody of the abductor while judicial proceedings are carried out. In such cases, when girl is presented in the court, she is under influence of the abductor. This results in her statement that she has willfully converted and married to the abductor. The case is settled without any relief for the victim family. While in the custody of the abductor, the victim girl may be subjected to sexual violence, rape, forced prostitution, human trafficking, sale and other domestic abuses. In such cases, justice is violated. The abducted girl do according to the instructions of the abductor. The abductor blackmails the abducted girl for recording false statement. So the girl record a false statement in front of the police authority, court and family. The case of Hindu girl married to Muslim boy was brought to Islamabad High Court. In the proceeding, Justice Shaukat Aziz Siddiqui said that all are equal in the sight of law. Don't kill the girl for embracing Islam. Married according to her will, lawyer of the boy said husband of Maria Bilawali Bhutto and his family is being accused of abduction and theft.
یہ سارا صرف گیم ہے کاروباری کا, ان کو مارنے کا, کسی بھی طریقے سے ان کو سندھ پہنچایا جائے اور مارا جائے.
Maria told that she has willfully converted to Islam. No one has forced her.
نہیں کی گئی ہے, کچھ بھی نہیں کیا گیا, میں اپنی مرضی سے آئی ہوں, کسی نے نہیں اٹھایا, کوئی مجھے اٹھا ہی نہیں سکتا ہے.
Girl should be allowed to meet her parents.
پارلیمان میں ڈالا جائے اور ہمارے ساتھ انصاف کیا جائے تاکہ لڑکی ان کے پاس نہ ہو نہ ہمارے پاس ہو, بیچ میں ہو, جو لڑکی کا فیصلہ ہو اس کو سب کو قبول ہوگا.
As the court demanded, Maria recited the holy kalma of Islam. Court said on next hearing, Maria has to meet her parents in court.
سندھ کا اس وقت کوئی بھی ایسا شہر نہیں ہے جہاں سے ہندو نوجوانوں کو تاوان کے لیے اغوا کیا جا رہا ہے اور دوسری طرف سندھ کی ہندو بیٹیوں کو جس طرح دن دھاڑے اغوا کیا جا رہا ہے اور ان کا جس طرح مذہب تبدیل کیا جا رہا ہے. رنکل کماری کو رات کو 2 بجے اس کے گھر سے اغوا کیا گیا. اس اغوا کے بعد جب ایف آئی آر
कटवाने उनके रिश्तेदार पहुंचे तो वो एफआईआर नहीं काटी गई। रोडों पे निकलने के बाद बमुश्किल वो एफआईआर काटी गई। इस दरमियान में जो डीपीओ का किरदार रहा, यहां बैठे हुए मेरे जो अकलियत से ताल्लुक रखते हैं एमएनए मेरे भाई, हर एमएनए ने कोशिश करी डीपीओ से बात करने की, लेकिन वो डीपीओ किसी का फोन उठाना गवारा नहीं कर रहा था। ये कुछ फोटोज हैं जो वहां खींचे गए थे। उस लड़की को जब घोटकी की अदालत में पेश किया गया तो उसने वाज़ेह स्टेटमेंट दी कि मैं अपने मां बाप के साथ जाना चाहती हूं, लेकिन वही तौर तरीके इंतजामिया के, क्योंकि उस एमएनए साहब का प्रेशर था।
Thank you. As probably most of you have noticed, that was not the movie that I announced. That was not the Uyghur situation in China, but the Pakistan movie. I will now therefore change the order of the speakers so we are in line with the content, which is why I would like to introduce Mr. Luhana, the General Secretary of the World Sindhi Congress. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Should I come there? Yes. First and foremost, I'm really grateful to the GHRD and Mr. Seetal Sathanand and the team of GHRD, enabling us to send our voice of suffering and pain to all of you, and through you to the entire world. Today's topic is human rights situation in China and Pakistan. So, because it's 5 minutes, I have to be really very, very precise. So the sequence of my statement would be just to provide you what is Sindh, what is Pakistan, what is happening in that part of the world with Sindhis, and most importantly, why it matters to the world. Now, I'll tell you, sometime go back and to see in Google, Sindh is one of the oldest countries in the world. Sindh is one of the oldest countries in the world. And we belong to the Indus civilization, which is one of the most ancient civilizations of the world. For thousands of years, fast forwarding to 1843, when Sindh was an independent country, was captured by the British Empire. Fast forwarding to 1947, when subcontinent, without consulting and understanding, even that point in time, the right to self-determination wasn't enshrined in the charter, without considering the wishes of the nations, the subcontinent was divided, and unfortunately, Sindh came to Pakistan, and that was the start of a very darkest era. Coming back to current Sindh, fast forwarding 75 years, Sindh, according to the official figures, provides 70% of the resources of the wealth of the revenue of Pakistan, 70%. 72% of gas of Pakistan, 64% of oil of Pakistan, 6th largest coal deposits of the world, worth $23 trillion. And to that country that produces 70%, the situation is, Emma was talking about the girls' education. officially the Sindh government says that there are 7 million children. That is almost the population of many European countries. 7 million children in Sindh under the age of 10, they are out of education. The real figures that we gathered, the female education is not there are 36%, 37% of. There are more than 2/3, more than 67% of girls, they are out of education. There are 80% of the schools, they don't have water or sanitation facilities. According to the Supreme Court, the drinking water that the people of Sindh use, 80% of people, that's not suitable for animal consumption even. Not suitable for animal consumption, and creating literally a pandemic of disease, of hepatitis, of tuberculosis. And on the other hand, they are taking over millions of acres of land. They are settling people from outside. So Sindh could be converted into Sindhis could be converted into minority on their own motherland. And currently 60% of the youth who have passed through universities, they are out of employment. The level of malnutrition, according to the UN, 70% of people in Sindh suffer from malnutrition. On average, 10 children die of malnutrition every day in Sindh, and that is a Sindh. And then if you raise the voice, you are abducted. You are gone. You are missing. There are hundreds of Sindhi youth who are missing, and for many, many years. At the time of partition, Sindhi Hindus made 29% of population of Sindh. And today, they are only 6%. But the way the atrocities are being committed, they are leaving. And you were talking about in this documentary, heart-wrenching, about the conversion of girl. Yesterday, a 9-year-old girl, she has been abducted and forced converted. Can you believe that? And coming back to the Pakistan, if you are in any understanding that is a country run by the democratic system, no. From day one, Pakistan has been run by the military. There is no institution. There is no parliament. There is no judiciary. There is no even press. They all are controlled very, very heavily by the army. Army is the largest corporate company of Pakistan. They run. If tomorrow they want to remove one, they bring the governments, they remove the governments, and that is what is happening. And I tell you one thing, that why it matters to you, because Pakistan has the 6th largest army in the world. Pakistan has got the largest per capita soldiers in the world. Pakistan has got an army of 2 to 3 million religious these terrorists and extremists, 2 to 3 million. There is no other comparable army in the world, and they can create havoc on the world. Just go back and see that the demonstrations and protests, how vicious against France by the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. In these protests, number of people were killed, even from the police, and these people were released. They don't have only Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, they have scores of religious extremist groups. And they are, now the world knows, they are the proxies of the Pakistani army. And they don't only create this situation against the nations which are oppressed in Pakistan, like Sindhis and Balochs and Pashtuns. They create the instability. Say, for example, Afghanistan. Who created Taliban? You need to know. This is the Pakistan who did that. Now, after 20 years of US being there, these Taliban came back. So they were capable, and they were celebrating. Even the Pakistan's prime minister was very happy that they were victorious. They were capable to bring that. So it is this religious fundamentalism is spreading, and this is reaching to your doors. Just go back. And so I tell you one thing, it is your time. Like during the time of Second World War, there was Holocaust, and they didn't have the voice. We, the Sindhi people, and the Baloch people, who don't have the voice. You become our voice. It is your responsibility. It is the responsibility of the international community. It is the responsibility of any human being who believe in human dignity and human rights, that they should raise our voice and to tell the world what atrocities and why it matters to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're sorry that we have to cut you short, but we have a limited amount of time. Once again, I am forced to improvise because Mr. Dokun Issa, who will join us here today online, the president of the World Uyghur Congress, has to attend another meeting. So I would like to welcome him via live stream. We will later on show the movie on the Uyghur genocide as well. Thank you for your patience.
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much again. And as has become clear by now, current situation of the Uyghur people has never been more urgent. The Uyghurs are suffering incredible as the action of the Chinese government has put very existence of Uyghur people on the street. In the last 5 years alone, Chinese government has subjected Uyghur people to mass arbitrary detention, millions of Uyghur, Kazakh, and other people in concentration camp, where they are subject to severe abuse, such as torture and gender-based violence. Mass sterilization and the forced abortion of Uyghur women and other birth prevention measures in order to diminish Uyghur population. Forced labor and the modern slavery of hundreds of thousands of Uyghur people, attempt destroy unique Uyghur identity and forcibly assimilate the Uyghur people into Han-centric China. Destruction, physical repression of the Uyghur identity, including thousands of mosques, graveyards, and other sites of religious, cultural, and historical importance to the Uyghur people. Bans Uyghur, use the Uyghur language in many schools and public space. Separating Uyghur children from their family, may estimate around 1 million Uyghur children separate from family, to indoctrinate them to be loyal to the Chinese Communist Party and forsake their Uyghur identity. Harassment, punishment, Uyghur diaspora, and anyone who dare speak out. Taken together, Chinese Communist Party trying to destroy and erase Uyghur people. We are expressing a genocide, and this finally being recognized by international community. As a response to this crisis, 9 national parliaments in the world recognize Uyghur genocide. Following past resolution, US, UK, Canada, Netherlands, Lithuania, Belgium, Czech Republic, France, Ireland, as well as officially recognized by the US government. In December 2021, the Independent Uyghur Tribunal confirmed this allegation in its final judgment, highlighting the legal obligation that signatories of the UN Genocide Convention must prevent Uyghur genocide from happening. The testimonies at the Uyghur Tribunal have shown that behind each million of Uyghur people affected by CCP genocidal policy against Uyghurs, a family and friends who love Islam. I personally lost both of my parents under mysterious circumstances in the past year due to the CCP policy. My mother died in the concentration camp 2018. They have sentenced my younger brother to life imprisonment, my older brother to a long sentence, and forced my remaining family member to denounce me. Nearly every Uyghur has family stories and the lost on the pain. What's happening Uyghur is spreading other peoples in China too. Repressive techniques tested Uyghurs are now being used, the quash distance in Hong Kong and the surveillance technology being exported abroad. Chinese government is undermining human rights in the UN and threatening human rights and freedom around the world. In 19 48, international community formally recognized and codified the concept of human rights in the UN Declaration of the Human Rights, promising to work together to create a world without violence, discrimination, and genocide. In August 2018, UN Committee on Elimination of Radical Discrimination provides and explores on the detention of at least 1 million Uyghur in detention camp and the widespread right violation. Third review situation of Uyghur marks turning point in the recognition of Uyghur crisis by international community. In June 2020, 50 UN expert and special reporter issued jointly communication their increasing concern on the human rights violation in Turkestan. In November 24, 2021, CERT sent a follow-up letter to China's request, comment, and action of several issues. Last week, World Uyghur Congress jointly nearly 200 NGOs is an open letter urging UN High Commissioner for Human Rights for publish her report on the Uyghur issue. The High Commissioner has been requesting access to the region since 2018 without success. In September 2021, Madam Bachelet confirmed that her office was finalizing its assessment of the available information on allegation of the serious human rights violation in Turkestan with a view to making public. In December, spokesperson of the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights said report would be released in matter of weeks. However, during her report of the Council last week, High Commissioner has announced her office has reached an agreement with the Chinese government for visit in the May. It is extremely concerning that she has not been transparent of this process and the condition of the visit. The visit should also not be an excuse not to publish the report. It's undermined credibility of her office to believe China will allow the unfettered, the meaningful access that will allow the human rights defender, victim, and their family to speak High Commissioner openly and satisfied. This is in this context, High Commissioner should engage meaningful for the Uyghur group, the society organization around the condition of her. Mr.
Isa, can you hear us? Can you still hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Were you finished? I'm sorry, the connection on our side was a little bit bad.
Yes, I'm finished.
Thank you so much then. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. So in order not to confuse the people present in this hall and our viewers any further, I would like to stick to the Chinese topic of the day, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Marco Respinti, who actually traveled here today, which we're very thankful for. For those who don't know him, he's the director in charge of Bitter Winter magazine. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. China is a totalitarian state where people exist only as functions of the ruling elite. Basic rights are blatantly denied, and liberty is severely restricted as a mere concession of the government for the sake of the government itself. In China, the government is in fact not instituted for serving the common good, but it is merely the other name of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, undemocratically in power since October 1st, 1949, and responsible for millions and millions of deaths, possibly killer number one in all human history. The only historical rival of the CCP is in this staggering slaughter of human beings, its fellow communist Soviet Union. But while the USSR is gone, communist China is still there and growing in the world prominence, surviving the historical failure and tragic collapse of communism quite able to revitalize its own liberticide system and animated by pungent content for ethnic minorities, women and children, I find no other name for this hell on earth today than neo-post-national communist China. As you just heard, I arrived this morning from Italy, my country, and now I could go back. All that is relevant is contained in the sentences that I just pronounced. All that is worth saying on China is already there. But if shortness is a virtue in public speaking, sometimes evident truths deserve to be furtherly sounded out, to be fully appreciated in all their profoundness, or as in our case today, in all their horrors. I go directly to the negation of basic human rights in China. Human rights are not what international meetings, political majorities, and government commissions decide, for the simple reason that what international meetings, political majorities, and government commissions decide come and go, are bestowed on people today just to be turned down tomorrow. These are no rights. These are grants. To be rights, they should be undeniable, unalienable, untouchable. They must be inherent to the human being. They must proceed from the human nature. So for the very reason of being a human being distinguishable from any other living being or non-living object, a human being is entitled to certain intangible and sacrosanct and even taboo rights that no fellow human being, no group, no organization, no political or economic force, no state and no church can curtail and challenge, repudiate or veto. Chief and first among the rights that the human being is entitled to by his or her very nature is religious freedom, for the simple reason that all human beings have the right to know truth, and the nature of the truth focused upon by religions, faiths, creeds, and beliefs is supreme. In recognizing the existence of God, a highest being or spiritual entity, or in denying it resides the ultimate and total sense of one's life. For this reason, religious freedom is the first liberty of man, and the right to its exercise is the fundamental human rights from which all subsequent rights, expressions, association, education, ownership, etc. derive. But if it is so foundational for all human activity, since it is centered on the most seminal question of all, religious liberty has serious consequences. Believing or not believing in God, following or not following a spiritual way, has a tremendous impact on human behavior. It essentially influences the way in which people live, associate with others, animate society, do education, politics, economics. In one word, all human activity. In fact, religious liberty is not only the freedom to worship, but also to live according to one's belief. The gentle organizers of this important press conference today, the Club Suisse de la Presse and the Global Human Rights Defense, invited me to speak here today in my capacity of director in charge of Bitter Winter, an online magazine on religious liberty and human rights all over the world, whose core business remains anyway China. In China today, there is what we call the war on the very idea of God. Communist China has always judged religion as unnatural and thus sooner or later doomed to extinction. While awaiting for this fate, the CCP has contributed to reaching the extinction of religion with varying degrees of harshness, depending on times, leaders, national and international contexts. The new era of Xi Jinping favors a rapid acceleration with a direct assault on faiths, both those banned or somewhat tolerated and those approved and controlled by the state. This means only one thing. The CCP considers God its very enemy. Why? Because God is a direct rival of the CCP. Believers are increasingly compelled to remove and destroy religious images, to to substitute them with portraits of Mao Zedong and Xi Jinping himself. They are jealous God. The communist regime in Albania, one of the worst of all history, declared itself the first atheistic state of the world in 1967 and waged explicitly war on the very idea of God in its 1976 constitution. The CCP is doing it again today, in spite of the fact that the Chinese constitution grants, nominally, religious freedom. God must become extinct. In the meantime, the Chinese government is making believers become extinct. Now, in China, not all religious persecution is the same. There are nuances. In fact, we go from the awful situation for faiths, creeds, and belief to appalling condition for believers. The best description of the religious landscape in today's China remains the three markets model suggested by Chinese sociologist Fegang Yang in 2006, that Bitter Winter, the magazine I'm honored to be the director in charge of, adopted since the beginning. Fegang Yang wittily proposes to recognize a red market, a gray market, and a black market for faiths and organized religions in China under the CCP rule. Let me just briefly explain. The red market includes the only 5 religious organizations approved by the regime: the Buddhist, Taoist, and Muslim association controlled by the government, and the Protestant Three Self and Catholic Patriotic Churches, whose leaders are appointed by the CCP. In this way, the party controls such large groups of believers from within. We then have the black market, which is the kingdom, so-called, of the Xiejiao. Xiejiao is an old Chinese expression meaning heretic, heterodox teachings. Nowadays, the CCP is reviving that expression, Xiejiao, to translate it improperly as evil cults. So the black market is the place where the CCP puts all the so-called Xiejiao, the cults, which are cults only by definition of the state. There is no scientific agreement on what a cult is. And in China, you are a cult, a Xiejiao, only if you belong to a list, which is a list made by the Chinese state of cults. So it's a revolving thing that goes in this way. So the red market, the black market, in between we have the gray market of religions, which is the area where the state, the CCP, is not able to control directly religions, or is not able to crush them directly, so it considers them illegal, but it does not have the force right now to crush on them. I have a longer text that is available for you if you want, with a lot of data, but I want just to point out, and I'm going to conclude, the staggering case of a large religious group in China, which is almost completely unknown abroad, and for this reason is constantly harassed by the CCP because no one is paying attention. It is called the Church of Almighty God. The 2021 annual report on victims of that group has just been released. You find a review on Bitter Winter. I have some of numbers here, which I won't bother you with now, but it's staggering. The human toll that this group is paying. Another famous in China group is the Falun Gong. Falun Gong has been the victim of human harvesting, meaning they consider them enemy of the state. They put them to jail. They sentence them to death, and they take organs out of their bodies, sometimes when they're still alive, to feed the huge black market of human transplants. The China Tribunal in London, a popular court of law whose ruling arrived in March 2020, found the CCP guilty of crimes against humanity in this field. And the sentence is a 500 pages report on this. We heard from Dolkunes, my good friend, about Uyghurs, Xinjiang, that they call East Turkestan, is becoming an open-air concentration camps. And the CCP calls us as fake news. But we have videos, we have pictures, there are testimonies. Dolkuna is passed through that. Many friends passed all through that. Let me just conclude that CCP is waging a religious total war against all religions. This happens because the CCP is a materialistic God that cannot stand any rival. Humiliation of people is a daily business for this lying God, and the saddest part of the story is that most of the world is content to go hand in hand with it, doing business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rispinti. In order to finish our focus on the human rights situation in China for now, I would like to now start with the movie I promised you earlier on the situation of the Uyghur population. Thank you.
Bizde 2017-de başlanğandı bu işler. 2017'de, 2018'lerde bular şu bizden ahalla topumuz var. Şu Biçat'ta. Şu toplu oturuş kıldı. Andan keyin 2019-yılı kelgen vaqtidami, yana şu toplu oturuş kıldı. 18 yaşdan 59 yaşgacha tug'ut yeshidagi qiz ayollar Changloyandagi ambulatoriyaga berib, böyle qo'sh tekshirish olib berildi. Ashdan qatnashsizlar. Agar uningga moslashmay xizmat moslashmay boshqa nima qilsanglar, qarshi qilsanglar, urug' tuqqanlarni doğru tikmanglar, bolalaringlarni doğru tikmanglar. Cho'qim ashdan moslashinglar kerak. Saqchixonaga olib tumir o'tirsa degan uqtirishlar bor.
In the northwest of China, close to Central Asia, is located the Xinjiang Uyghurs Autonomous Region. 25 million inhabitants live in this region, which spreads over 1.6 million square kilometers. Numerous ethnic groups are living in Xinjiang, and there are a dozen autonomous prefectures and counties. Minorities are majorities in this region, including the Uyghurs, which are Muslims. Kalbinur Siddiq, 51, is a former teacher of Chinese. In 2016, she was forced to teach Chinese in Uyghurs camps. During 2 years, she witnessed physical injuries on her students, heard screams from torture's room, saw young men and women disappear. Today, she fled China to tell us the story of her people.
Derizleri bütünlüğü qalay payatlayotgan qop-qorong'i ekan, lekin har birisida bir taldan biz adiyal bor ekan, ko'na shunday biz adiyal qarsangizlar 10 tal shunaqa qatlanib turibdi. Ana degan derizlarda 10 tal kurushka bor ekan, g'arbiylashtirgan bir kurushka. Shuni men qarab ko'z yugurtiblamay bo'lam, smut etdi ekanda deb yana bir xil andisha vahima ichida shunday u darsni boshlaydi, bu otamni sinfga kirdim. Ben bu erler lagerda 6 ay tutdum aşağıda. 6 ay şu yerda turish jarayonida nurg'unlagan depsanchiliklarga, nurg'unlagan azob-uqubatlarga, qiyin qistoqlarga, hattoki aşağıda yo'tkab ekib qolgan, yangidan kelayotgan, anadan keyin tutib kelingan, masalan 3-oyning 20-dan boshlab 4-oyning 1-gacha tutib kelinganlar keyin 7-8 ming bo'lib ketdi. Bularning 90% shu 18 yoshdan 40 yoshgacha yoshlar. Qalğan 10% çoğunlar. Demek ben desep kelgan vaqtimda aşı bina 4 qavat binanın 10 tarafı bilan maşındaq turmiti, ma sol tarafda ishxona 2-3 qavatlar uchuq chiqilib bo'lgan, tushib chiqilib bo'lgan. Chunki aşı birinchi qavat turminingki ichidan birla tualet bor, shular olib chiqarilgan. Odatda xizmatchilar, saqcharbiylar masalan bizlar bo'lsak 2-chi qavatlarga, tepalarga chiqamiz ham uchuqlamdi. Lekin şu 3-oyning 20-dan boshlab 4-oyning 1-gacha şu 2-chi qavatdan boshlab ustidan hammani ashunda qirishotkilik qilib, derizlarni teshlarni ram qilib, ular shunda tez suratda hammani turmaga aylantirib o'tibdi. Kiçik işlep, ədisimi normal sütəs, ötəmidi qoş avazlar şunda qarxın. Hələ payatlab atqan şunda avazlar. Hər günü 3 vaxt 1 minutdalam tuvalet kiriş fürsəti var bulaniki. Yoluşum bu video söz ötüp, ular öz başta ajraştırdı. Kendi yana söz ötüp video meni ayalım 2019 şirketkene bir montajlar gepler bilen ivetip şunu olar ötken yıl 12. aydan 24'den kiyinlam yana şu yoluşum bilen iş qandaq onun xabarini alamadım, o ayatmı, ya akır ketdimi, onu bilemedim. Ben de çıkamıqdım da, pek ağırıp ketdim dedim. 5 ay şunda qatıq ağırdım, 5 ay ağır çeliyordum, ben köp oylandım. Hakikaten işkiniz buldu diken. Çünkü tukanı yemeden tatlı oldu. Ben aslında oylandım, benim yoluşum bat olsa, vatanda qalğan tukanlarım bat, tutkan öy makan jaylarım bat olsa, hizmet pensiya çıksa, maaşım şundan yukarı çıktım nemel olsa, bu hemen qayırıp koyup, ondan keyin bu kadarını besiş gereken de, ben bu qanday qilishim kerak dedim, şunda köp oylandım ama benim vicdanım g'ururum qat'iy buni so'zlamay mana sukut turishga yor bermadi faqat chidag'im qolmadi men u bolani uyida beshidim bolani uyida bir shikoy u tug'an turish jarayonidami shu yossam masalan karvatlar nimalar qattiq yedik badanlarimga patdi men bir yossam shuni smot yetayotgan aptini ko'z oldim keladi anaki mayli men tomoq yey mayli choy ichib bir qach suv ichsam ashlarni suvi zor bo'lganlari ashlarni man qargan talmurishlari ko'z oldimdan faqat ketmadi.
I would like to proceed with the last in-person speaker we have here today, Dr. Naseer Dashti, who's on my left. He is the Executive President of the Baloch Human Rights Council. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I will focus on the human rights situation in Baluchistan. Since the occupation of Baluchistan by Pakistan in 1948, the history of the Baluch is a tale of blood and tears. To contend the Baluch national struggle for regaining their independence, the Pakistan has unleashed a reign of terror for the last many decades. There are many aspects of human rights violations in Balochistan. One is the genocidal acts, which include the enforced disappearances. The enforced disappearances, the phenomena where the Pakistani military and its security agencies, they pick up human rights activists, political activists, doctors, engineers, students, teachers, and they keep them incommunicado for years. Their families, their friends, they don't know their whereabouts or the fates of their loved one. There is a conservative estimate of 4,833 persons which have been disappeared since 2006. there is another aspect of human right violation which is called the kill and dump policy. The Pakistani security agencies, with the help of their collaborative auxiliary organization, which are known as the Army's death squads, they pick up people, they torture them, and throw their mutilated bodies in desolate areas. And this is a routine affair in Balochistan. Hundreds of students, teachers, political activists, social activists, human rights activists, journalists, they have been killed in such ways. Then there is a phenomena of mass graves. Mass graves were found in many locations in Balochistan since 2011. Many actions of the Pakistani military in Balochistan can easily be termed as genocide acts under the international laws and UN conventions. Then there is another aspect of human rights violation in Balochistan, which is the conversion of a secular Baloch society into a religious fundamentalist one. Thousands of religious schools are sponsored by Pakistani military, where the children are taught a very medieval version of religion, and they are trained or indoctrinated to become jihadis or to convert the humanity into Islam. Then there is another aspect of human rights violation, which is the resource exploitation. Balochistan is one of the richest regions in that part of the world. And Pakistan and China, they are collaborating and extracting gold, uranium, plutonium, gas, oil. Even the Chinese trawlers, they have depleted the marine life in the Baloch coast, which has been the lifeline of the Baloch for centuries. Then there is another aspect of cultural genocide, where an alien language, Urdu, has been imposed as the national language of Balochistan. And 1,000 years old cultural and social traditions of the Baloch are being ridiculed in school curriculum as un-Islamic. And in all practical purposes, the Baloch are living under the shadow of the sword of Pakistani military with its religious fundamentalist doctrines and human rights violation and genocide acts. It's high time for the international community to raise voices against this brutal military machine of the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. Our last speaker for today will join us again online. That is Mr. Naveed Walter. He is the founder and president of the NGO Human Rights Focus Pakistan. We'll wait a second until the connection is there.
Thank you very much, the host and the panelists, for raising the atrocities and the important issues of Pakistan. And I would like to start from the beginning to share the history and the base of such atrocities. Pakistan was founded in 1947, and that time the minorities population was 23%. But unfortunately, in 1957, it was shared that the minorities population is now 14%. And after that, as the time was passing, the minorities population was going to decrease. Until 2017, the last census was conducted, and the minorities don't know what is their exact population. And not only minorities were disagreed, but the people from Sindh and other parts also became disagreed about the population. That was the reason, because the government was not agree to give the rights according to the population of minorities. In the same way, the Pakistan was founded by the liberal leader, and he said that everyone is free to go to their churches, temples, worship places. But after that, the vision of the founding of Pakistan was changed. For example, Khaja Nizamuddin said that the individuals have no concern with their personal matter. The religion is a matter of the state. That's the reason when the Pakistan's amendment was going to be changed in 1947, in 1974, that was the second amendment. And it was about to make the Ahmadiyya's community as a minority. And after that, there were many amendments. And in Ziaul-Haq regime, who was the dictator, in his regime, 15 amendments were made from 1985 to onward. And the blasphemy laws were also made and amended in his regime, 295A, 295B, and 295C. Unfortunately, until now, 2,000 people have been victimized for blasphemy charges. And present, and 80 persons have been killed extrajudicial, has been lynching, have been killed on the spots, have been killed in the prisons, have been killed in the streets, have been killed during the court trials. The two recent examples could show you the mindsets of people. One, a person who was working from the Sri Lanka in a Sialkot, he was murdered on a spot. First they murdered and then they burnt him alive. And other example, just a last month example of a city, Miachannu, where a person was killed on the spot. This shows the mindset of people, what the people want. This is not only by the religious fanatics, the extremist organizations, it's also due to the state policy. When the state said that they want to form a country on a model of Medina state, then why the people will not become radicalized? The recent example, a couple of days earlier, a sitting minister of this government said that he want to become a suicider. He want to attack the persons who are anti-Islam. In the same way, the minorities, girls who are underage, who are under 18, as the UNICEF said, that the girls who are under 18 are minors. So until now, every year, 1,500 minority girls become abducted, forcefully converted, and forcefully married. And the bill was presented in the assembly, but it was denied, it was rejected to saying that this is an un-Islamic. There is a council of ideology. That council actually decides which bill is contrary to Islam or which is not contrary to Islam. So they rejected this bill. So, but minorities abduction is a big issue. When this issue happened from the start to end, from the home to mosque to courts and to the shelter which government provided them, all are biased. The lawyers are under threats, the judges are under threats, the human rights organizations who provide them assistance or raise their voice, they are also under threats. The human rights defenders are under threats. The families are under threats. So there is no way when the girl go to detention of the abductors, there is no way to return back. So this is happening in Pakistan at right now. And the attitudes or behaviors are not changing. The government look not serious to make the changes of the people's mindset, to promote the religious harmony, to promote the tolerance, to promote the peace. And they want to prove that Pakistan was made for Islamization, unfortunately. The minorities have reservations on the constitutional articles. Many sections are discriminatory. The laws and practices are discriminatory. For example, Article 2 said that Islam shall be a state religion. Article 41 said, the president shall be a Muslim. Article 91 said that prime minister shall be a Muslim. Article 25 said that everyone is equal to state. But this article don't define on the basis of religion, but only on the basis of sex and gender. So this is a biased attitudes and behavior. This is a discriminatory practices and laws against minorities. In the same way, the many things which government have taken steps is not in favor of the minorities. The minorities representation is also not a real representation because the minorities could not elect directly their representatives. These are just chosen by the government, the political parties, and they could choose anyone. And then these representatives could not express their issues, which are really belonging to the religious minorities.
Mr. Walter, I'm unsure if you can hear me. If I would ask you, due to our limited time, that you come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I'm summarizing.
Thank you.
I would like to raise such issues on international community. And I ask to pressurize the government of Pakistan to implement the covenants, the conventions, the UDHR, the ICCP articles 18 to 22, right of expression, assembly, association, and thought, including religious freedom. And also the United Nations asked to the world for Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals, which are 17, about equality, about quality education, about justice, about human rights, and about no one leave behind. So Pakistan should pressurize to implement the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals, that the Pakistan could also come on a mainstream, could also come a part of world, and not like to live in isolation from the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Before moving on to the last item on our agenda, the Q&A session, I would like to take a second and thank you all in this room and also the people who joined our live stream for being here, for joining us, and on behalf of Global Human Rights Defense, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to take some questions from the room and also from the people following on Zoom. So on Zoom, you can just push on the button, which is at the bottom part of the screen, to raise your electronic hand. So don't hesitate to ask. But first, we're going to take questions from the room, if there are some. Any questions? No question. One question here, one there. Here, please, lady. This lady. The mic is coming to you. Please just tell your name and ask your question, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm a GHRD delegate, and my name is Victoria Walczyk. I have a question to Dr. Luhana. So, in your opinion, what do you think could gradually improve the situation in Pakistan when it comes to human rights?
Thank you very much. It's really a very important question. What we have seen that over the period of time, the human rights situation has worsened rather than any improvement. I give you an example. We met with the working group on enforced involuntary disappearances. 8 special rapporteurs, they wrote to the Pakistan government and said that to make the enforced disappearances criminal. So they passed a bill. Rather than making the enforced disappearances criminal, they say those people who say that their relatives or family is abducted by the army and intelligence agencies, they should provide the proof that the agencies are involved. If they fail to provide the proof, they will be charged and they will be sent to prison. So, because wherever you see the dictatorial regimes and army is controlling the whole affairs, there isn't any hope. What is the hope? It is basically the international community. You see the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Russia is a big power. But because of the international pressure, because of the international sanctions, they are crumbling, and they somehow, if not today, tomorrow, they have to recognize the rights of the Ukrainian people. So it is basically very, very important that it is the time. Internally, we have got no recourse to justice. No way. The only way, the only hope, because say, for example, I was giving an example to Emma, that those people, 6 million people who were massacred in Holocaust, they didn't have the voice. It is the international community who came for their support, and they get this whole Europe basically freed. And this has to happen because Pakistan is a case, and that international community has to increase the pressure. They have to increase basically the sanctions. For example, there is a GSP plus status. As a result of GSP plus status, Pakistan government gets 1.2 billion euros as a benefits. And there are a lot of others. Say, for example, over the last 20 years, US has provided aid, not loan, of almost to the tune of $40 billion. And that all goes to not to the public good, because Lina was saying that the expenditure on health and education is total less than 3% in a country, while more than 67% goes to the military. So that military will not agree unless there is a pressure from the international community, from the international human rights organizations like GHRD, and from the international community to put sanctions on Pakistan unless they do not oblige to the fundamental, because the human rights are not associated with any condition. These are universal. They do not oblige the human rights, there will be sanctions on Pakistan. And unless we do not see any hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a question in the back. Sir,
actually,
yes.
My question being answered by asked by
your
young
name,
lady.
please.
My question being asked by young lady, and Dr.
Luhana explained, but I have to do it again. As the international community, especially USA, they know the Pakistan government is very brutal government, and they do many things, and they know about the genocide, and they're helping the Taliban, and they're creating terrorism in Afghanistan, all around the world. Why they don't take action? Instead of taking action, helping Pakistan military to bombardment the Baluch people and the other nation around them, the minority in the Pakistan. What is the reason for that? Thank you. Any of you can.
Thank you. Who would like to answer on this?
Because why the US is helping Pakistan, we should know the context of the creation of Pakistan. Pakistan was created by the British Empire to safeguard its colonial interests in the Middle East and in Central and South Asia. They used, after the Second World War, when the colonial system was crumbling, they created many client states. The Pakistan is one of the client states of the British Empire, and the US inherited the legacy of the British Empire. So they think still the US and the UK, they are in the opinion that they can use Pakistan for their strategic and political or economic purposes. So until Pakistan is useful for them, they will supply arms, they will supply money, they will do any favor to Pakistan. That is the reason.
Thank you very much. Is there any other question, sir? The mic is coming to you. Just a second.
My name is Samad Balouch. My question is also related with the earlier two questions.
Yes, please talk into the mic.
Yes. Can you?
That's fine.
Yeah. My question is also related to the questions already raised. As the panelists all mentioned, that human rights abuses in Pakistan are rampant. They are increasing day by day. Serious human rights violation, cultural human rights violation, genocides, a systematic genocide of Baloch, Sindhis, Pashtuns in Pakistan, even China that you were talking about, Uyghurs, are happening. But how could the panelists could advise us, how could the international community or the civilized world will be convinced to make sanctions on Pakistan or stop Pakistan or China doing all these abuses? How could they be like they do helping Ukraine now? Baluchistan was also an independent country. It was annexed, similarly like Russia is trying to annex Ukraine. Similarly, we were a sovereign country. We were annexed by force. So how could we convince the international community or the civilized world to intervene before it's too late? Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to react on this. See, by having a protest in front of the UN building will not help. That is an institution that is totally, they have their own meetings, and in fact there are so many problems in the world. The only reason is, as you can see, I will give you a very clear example, you know, what's happened with the Rohingyas. It's because of a lot of Islamic countries start pushing to the UN that they have to take action. And the UN only take action when there is a pressure from outside. And as long as the Balochis alone, as long as the Sindhi people are protesting alone, there is no international pressure. And they have, and you need the lobbying network must be on a higher level. And that is what we forget. We think by doing a protest, there is not even, I think nobody will notice that because they never come outside to see what is happening outside. And this is where I think it's failed, that we need to set up a more structured communication, lobbying, and networking. And there is what the Baloch and there is that for networking, and you need also resources. And if you don't have resources, you cannot do that. And if you see to other organizations, I can give you a sample that with the Rohingyas, the Saudis have pushed a lot of money into that we have a lot of, every news channel had this as an agenda, and that is what make it popular. If you see advertisement of Coca-Cola, then you believe that that is the only drink you can buy. So, and nowadays news channels are totally only focusing on a few minutes. So when we started this organization 20 years ago, we come to know that nobody reads reports anymore. We are in a different time zone now. So we started 2 years ago to set up a basic human rights TV channel, 24 hours, only human rights violation. And the first message when we announced it that we want to do that, the only message we got, very emotional, from the Yazidis. And they said, this we should have long time ago, because when everything was happened and we were all, our girls were being raped and kidnapped, then CNN came, then BBC came, but then it was too late. And same is happening in Balochistan. For the media, it's not interesting because they cannot sell it. We are depending on the international media, and the international media is commercial. They want to have the clicks, they want to have their selling point, and they will want to put it on the front page. And you can put anything on Pakistan, it will just say half a day and it will disappear. It's all about networking. And I think it's good that, as Sir said, we need to find like-minded NGOs that can work together. And when we work together, it's going to cost less resources, but also we can be more effective. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one more question there, sir. Just you want to add something? Just go ahead, shortly. It's okay, it works. Okay. Just speak close to the mic.
If I may just quickly add on China. By the way, Mr. Winter, my magazine deals a lot with religious liberty and human rights violation in Pakistan as well. And there is an interesting meeting point where China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan meet, and we should study that more carefully. It's interesting what China is doing against Muslim people in Xinjiang and elsewhere, while fueling some other terroristic Islamic organization bothering India, for example, and other places. So it's interesting what they are trying to do. But to go back to your question, I don't have an answer. Basically, I try as a journalist to see what happens. And what happens is that, first of all, for the genocide that the CCP is waging against Tibetans, Mongolians, and Uyghurs, for example, has been quite widely denounced by a few parliaments in the West, starting from the US Congress, going to the Netherlands, and Canada also. So there are political forces and parliamentary forces who are openly recognizing that what is going on in China is genocide. And I'm using this word carefully and shivering, because genocide, as lawyers know, is not a synonym to slaughter, mainly. It has a technical, legal connotation since Raphael Lemkin and those days. So when you target someone with an accusation of genocide, you're doing something very precise and very important. So there are parliaments who are recognizing China as a genocidal force. This is very important. We need to work on that. We need to make people know, because many people don't know. On the other hand, as usual, follow the money. China is a powerful economic state, and this may help us understand why, while some parliaments recognize genocide, some others don't. I come from a country, Italy, that has signed an awful memorandum of agreement of a merely political nature with China. We are almost kneeling down a genocidal state. and we do nothing. So this is not an answer, but it's a comment on what you're saying. There are hopes, concrete hopes, because when you have parliaments acting, this is a concrete hope, but we need to do more.
Thank you. So one more question, and then we will have to wrap up. Thank you, sir.
Hello. So my question is that human rights situation in China and Pakistan, this is the subject. Especially if you are NGOs organization working about human rights violation. China is not violating the human right, is not today. It's a decade, not only nationally, internationally. They violating human rights in Africa. They took the resources and rather they kill the Africans. In the Baluchistan and Sindhi, we have a port. They are under here lease in under the Pakistani umbrella. China violating the law. We are the indigenous people of Sindhi. They're grabbing our land by 100 years. According, this is a not constitutionally and law, but they are interest, European interest, American interest. They allow to China exploit the resources. China is exploiting resources in Africa, in Asia, and in Indian subcontinent.
Please, can we have your question, please?
Yeah, this is my question. Is human rights violation of the China's? If you didn't talk about, you only prospect of minorities they violating China, but not, it's so many parts China violating the law. So why you didn't work about that and other cases of China
Okay,
they
I
are
understand.
violating?
Who would like to answer this question? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I am talking like that. China. China is exploiting the resources in Africa, in Asia. For example, I give to the example. I'm indigenous people of
please
Baluchistan
just repeat
and
your
Sindh.
question, please. And
Question is that is a port Qasim. It's a port. Pakistan unconstitutionally hand over to the China for 100 years. This is unconstitutionally. They violate the law. They violate our sea. They involve in the fish genocide.
I'm sorry,
for
sir,
example.
I have to interrupt you. Please ask again clearly your question so sir can answer.
Yes, my question is
yes,
that...
but what is your question? So you were asking, if I understand, why are you talking about only these cases in China and not cases of human rights violations in other parts of China?
Yeah.
So why do you focus only on this? I don't know who can answer.
If I understand correctly the question, why do we concentrate only on some regions?
Yes.
Well, we do not
Just a
concentrate.
moment. I think he was asking why we are concentrating on the minority rights where China is violating. Why we are not talking about other human rights which China is violating in Asia.
Okay.
And Africa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I think just because we have short time today, I have a long list of violations. As I mentioned, I can share with you. I co-run a magazine which on a daily basis documents violation in China and elsewhere, but let's remain on China. Everywhere, in all regions of China, a violation of human rights and religious liberty. We consider religious liberty the chief human rights and also the first political human rights. So this is why we concentrate on religious liberty. But there are all sorts of violations in China, violation of human rights against minorities. I don't like this word, against non-Han people. Many times, oftentimes, several times, we are speaking of millions of people, so no, it's not minority, but also against people in Hong Kong, as you know. They are trying also to get to Taiwan, as you know. They are harassing also Han people. There is a huge sections in in bitter winter, and it was part of my written paper today on the famous one-child policy, which is targeting all kind of people, minorities and non-minorities. Economic freedom in China is strictly controlled by the state, is limited by the state. It's a violation of a fundamental human rights. We can go on forever. I mean, Bitter Winter is out there for you to read if you're interested.
Thank you very much. I think we will have to leave it there. As you just said, it could take us hours going around and talking about all the human rights violations, and very unfortunately for sure, talking about all the human rights violations in all countries and in the world. Thank you for this presentation, for this involvement. Thank you to you all for being here. Thanks to all those who followed us on Zoom and online on our website, www.pressclub.ch. And I still wish you a good afternoon. Thank you very much. Have a good day.